Great. Okay. So, hi everyone. Oh, I have to do that, don't I? Okay, there we go. Good. Am I good? Am I good, Chris? I'm good, Chris. Okay.
You are good. If everyone would like to see Phyllis more, please put your view into speaker view.
So Chris, do you want to do a very brief introduction for people who
Absolutely.
have no idea who I am?
Is there anyone who doesn't know who you are? I hope not. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Fielding. I'm Phyllis Kraut's assistant and current tech helper. For those of you who do not know Phyllis, I'm so sorry. Phyllis is a pioneering spiritual teacher. She is one of America's first public witches. She's the first Wiccan priestess to merge core shamanism with witchcraft and retrieving our Euro-Indigenous wisdom. She's also an attorney who worked on a lot of the groundbreaking religious rights cases, including, and she's been inducted recently into the Martin Luther King Jr. Collegium of Clergy and Scholar. She's an internationally best-selling author who helped make witchcraft the fastest growing spirituality in America. And she's also the author of The Witch's Wisdom Tarot, which is what you're going to be discussing today. So, hail and welcome.
Thank you, Christopher, for your help always. And thanks to Danielle Barlow. You'll see her work right there, who is the artist with this marvelous deck. And I want to give thanks to the oracle, the wisdom behind the deck that came through and guided its creation, and the spirits and the guides and the teachers whose wisdom was shared and I hope properly interpreted in this deck for you. And I want to thank all of you for being with me as I do this introduction to the latest project that I've been working on, The Witch's Wisdom Tarot. There are a lot of wonderful old friends. So if I start crying, you'll know why. And we really should keep meeting like this more often, right? And there are wonderful new friends and colleagues and students, and I really am honored and delighted to be with you. I have a massive outline, as always, more than I could probably possibly cover in the time that we have. And I'm really excited about this class. I am excited about the whole project. I can't believe that it's been a year since it came out, and it's now out in Italian and French and Russian, published by someone in Belarus. Let's hope it's doing its magic there. And I want to do as much as cover as much ground as I can in introducing you to it today. And I want to take some time, a little bit of time, to work with it in some very simple, but I hope helpful and maybe even some profound ways, because it's always lovely to experience rather than just to listen. I'm going to really dive deep into the minor arcana today and its teachings about the magic of creation, which is essential to what makes this deck unique, I think. And some very important stuff about the majors, and we'll go deeper into that in the December workshops. And I want to frame this as an introduction to what are really, I think, revolutionary contributions to the genre and the spiritual praxis of Tarot, and really focus on its power. I keep looking down because I'm looking at my notes, otherwise I'm afraid I'll never get through it all. As a spiritual practice that is meant to awaken you to the magic within you, this deck in particular to the magic of creation, to help you remember where you are and who you are and why you're here. Familiar words to some of you, yeah. So the fact is that working with the tarot has the power to change your life. And I know that to be true because the reason that I'm a witch is a tarot reading that I had 40 years ago. Some of you will have read about it in my first book, Book of Shadows. The witch who read my tarot deck saw something that I didn't see and invited me to a very hidden coven. And it took a little more magic to persuade me, but that is where I was meant to be, the place I least expected to be. And so I understand the power of tarot to change your life. So one thing that would be very helpful to me, I'm going to put this into gallery view for myself for a moment, would be if you could like raise your hands and let me know if you have the deck, because that will help us in organizing. And I'm looking and Ted doesn't have it. Okay. And let me go to the other page. Is there another page? So Ted, you're the only person who doesn't have the deck. So it's a good thing we have. Okay. And second page. Looks like everybody's. Hello, Desiree. Hi, Desiree. Wonderful. What a treat. Okay, so Ted, you're the only man here who doesn't have the deck. All right. So Chris, we will keep that in mind when we do the breakout sessions. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. All right. So we can go to slide 3. Ha! Terrific. I love this. Yay! Can you read that? Yes, now we can read it. So the first part is a few things to know that are important. A little bit of a spell there. A few things to know to awaken the magic of the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. So we're going to fly through divination. I could speak for a weekend about divination, and I sometimes do, but it's important to give you my perspective because that informs both the creation of the deck, its values, its content, and how to work with it. A very, very quick history of the tarot, which I'd love to spend more time on, but we'll give you the essentials, because this deck is distinct. And so you have to sort of understand it in that context. I'm going to spend a little time on the biblical imagery and symbolism and the values within the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and the progeny, because it's the single most popular deck in the world, and virtually all decks since are based on it. And then we're going to focus very much on the wisdom of Mother Earth that is embodied and expressed in the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. I see the notes up here. And the wonderful thing is that you don't have to be a witch to benefit from Witch's Wisdom or from this deck, because it is rooted in a kind of universal wisdom that is true for every single one of us as children of the earth, regardless of our faith or lack of. And the essentials of what you need to know, and I think what the world needs to know from Witch's Wisdom, from Mother Earth's wisdom, which is what this deck seeks to share. And it's particularly, I think it came into being in no small part because it contains things that it's timely. It was time for a new tarot. It was time for a witch's tarot, and it was time for the wisdom encapsulated in this deck, because we have entered a time of prophecy, of tremendous challenges and enormous changes, and it provides things that that you need, that certainly I needed, because this journey transformed my life and really confirmed my own spiritual path and the revelations I've been receiving. And I think what the world needs right now, which is Mother Earth's wisdom. So we can go on to slide 4. So witch, very quickly. Witch, witcha, wise one. It's taken a long time for us to really unearth the full etymology of this word. It's a 5,500-year-old word. It comes from the Proto-Indo-European. And so we find variations of it in Russia, throughout Eastern Europe, in Scandinavian countries, throughout Europe, in England, down, starting to move into Southern Europe, a little less so there. And it meant a wise one, a seer of the sacred, a shaman, and a keeper of our Euro-Indigenous ancestors, and witches are famous, aren't they? And they're also feared for their ability to divine, to see into the hearts of those who came to them for guidance, to see into the future that is being shaped today, and most importantly, to see into the oneness of spirit and creation. And I think above all that is the role and the contribution that we have to make at this particular moment. And we've done so for thousands of years with a wide range of tools and techniques. And since the late 1400s with Tarot. And frankly, I've been working with the Tarot since I became a witch, and I suspect that most of you here, most of you here have a deck, so you're working with it. It's not the most ancient method of divination, but it is the most popular. So next slide, number 5. What's divination? Long, big, marvelous, magical, and I love that illustration. Incredible subject, right? For most people, it's a way to see into the future. It's a way to get guidance. It's the advice, the counsel, the information that they need to make a good decision, to know that they're doing the right thing, to have confidence in themselves and the choices that they're making. And it's also become what I call kind of speed therapy. Since the 1980s, I'll talk very briefly about it. It's really become a way of seeing into the self and understanding yourself and understanding the dynamics of your psyche, of the challenges and the patterns and the projections, so that you can start to take greater control of the life that you are creating and the life that you're meant to create. But for me, more than anything, divination is a spiritual practice. And it always startled me that the witches, modern witches, practiced it. They tended to do it as an aside and not as the spiritual practice that it is, which is why chapter 2 of witchcrafting was devoted to divination. We can go to slide 6, the Oracle of Delphi. So divination is, as we said, an ancient art. It goes back to the origins of our awakening as conscious and self-conscious beings. And it was practiced by sibyls and shamans and witches and wise ones and priestesses, and even the prophets of Abraham, who came a little bit later. And the most famous, of course, is the Oracle of Delphi. And on the temple, before you could enter to speak to the Oracle at Delphi, was inscribed, "Know thyself." And that is one of the purposes of divinations, certainly modern divination, to know oneself. Why? Because you are really the most important force shaping your life and shaping your future. So divination is this mirror for us to see within ourselves, to understand ourselves, to see our past and our attitudes, how they're shaped by the lives that we've led, our parents, our culture, our upbringing, to understand our emotions and our patterns and our projections and how they're influencing our present and setting the course for our future. It's a means of seeing the things that we can change, of helping us to understand how to change them, how to cope with things we can't change, and to really understand and learn the lessons that life is offering us so that we can begin to live the life that we're meant for. So we recognize our wounds and discover ways to heal them. And when we heal ourselves, we really do heal our future and we heal the world. So divination is profoundly empowering because you learn as you work with it that your future isn't fated, it's created. You know? And knowing what may come is empowering, not because you can control everything, because you can't, because reality is profoundly complicated and contains elements of chaos and randomness, and things happen, right? You can't control everything. This is one of the great contrasts between contemporary Wiccan cosmology and theology, with an A, and New Age spirituality that sort of places responsibility for everything in your lap. We see the world as infinitely complex and ourselves as a strand in a very rich tapestry. But when we know ourselves, we're empowered because we can control ourselves, we can control our responses, we can work with the things that happen to transform them from something devastating into something empowering. And divination can really help us to respond to what is taking place and what could take place. And that's how we begin to transform fate into destiny. And the help that we're seeking to see more clearly, to have more confidence, to make better choices, is given to us by divination. But there's a question that arises, right? Like, why should you trust what you're seeing? Why should you trust what someone else is reading for you? And I think that brings us back to why divination is a profound spiritual practice, and is essential to understanding the witch's wisdom tarot and what it's really all about. For me, divination is not just a means of seeing the future or seeing oneself. It's a way of seeing what the sacred sees, right? It's a way to see ourselves as the sacred sees us, healthy and whole and peaceful and purposeful and magical. And it's a way of receiving guidance from a sacred source that always, always has your best interests at heart. It's a way of helping oneself, yourself, and it's a way for you to help others. And it's a way that nourishes your intuition and your inner knowing and your innate divinity. The divination is a message from the divine. What it is in the word itself. It's a message from the divine. It's a way to speak to the sacred. It's a way to engage in dialogue with the divine. And the guidance is always in your best interest because the source is sacred. So with prayer, right, in most religious traditions, people are sending messages from our souls, from our circumstances, from our hearts to what is conceived of as divine in whatever image or form or expression that is, right? Having faith that the divine is listening and praying, that the divine will intervene. With divination, we speak and the divine answers us, and it advises, it counsels. And I'll give you an example right now. So before I do this, classes is the second or third time I've done it now, I always pull a card and I ask, what do I need to know to share with you as I begin the presentation to demonstrate a message coming to us, to me, to us from the divine? And the card that I pulled was this one, healing. And it was a very powerful journey that produced this. I'll talk a little bit more about how this was created, how the deck was created in a moment. But the information, the counsel that the divine provides in this card says, when least expected wounding occurs or reoccurs, you're not invincible, you aren't meant to be. Wise ones know that you cannot heal the wounds of others until you've healed your own. And healing takes time. This is a time of waiting, of stillness, of non-action, and reflection, of rest and rehabilitation. When you're ready, you'll realize that your wounds have opened you to compassionate connection to life. This connection will heal you, and you'll become a healer who knows the pathways of empathy, of kindness and resilience. Remember why you're here, and you'll be at peace. Be patient. It was very appropriate for me with experiences that occurred during the double initiations that I just conducted in Italy. And it was incredibly appropriate at this particular moment in reviewing the outline because I was thinking exactly of the deck as a healing deck. So the message was a reminder to me that above all things, this deck is a healing deck. It's a deck that I hope will help close the wounds that opened in our ancestors and in us and in the world when we lost sight of the sacred that is embodied by the world in which we live. And the deck, I think, is intended to give you back that sight. One of the things about divination that I adore is that it's not just communication, it's communion. It's a way for you to experience the presence of the sacred, alive, caring, compassionate, present with you. That's always there. You simply have to ask. And it's proof that the divine is present and aware and engaged in your well-being. It's deeply healing to realize that you're not alone. And after almost 2 years of isolation with this pandemic, even as we've returned to engagement, right, we're still in silos and having to keep distance, etc. Um, the opportunity to be in the presence of something holy and loving and benevolent was profoundly psychologically, spiritually, emotionally healing for me. And I think that's one of the great blessings and gifts of divination. There is always a wise and a loving and divine presence that is available to give you the guidance that you need when you need it, when all you have to do is ask. You have to ask the right questions to get the right answers, and you have to have the right oracle, because there are some that don't have the best, they're not constructed well, right? So they're not, it's like talking in a tin can with a string, right? Try across the Atlantic to have a conversation. And then there are other decks and other means of divination that put you right there in intimate connection. That kind of connection will show you your gifts and your purpose and how to cultivate them. And when you do, the world becomes a better place for your having been here, for you and for everyone and for the world itself. And real magic happens when that connection to yourself, to your purpose, and to the sacred is made. So for me, as a spiritual practice, divination is magic in action. And one of the best divination tools for engaging in this dialogue with the divine, in speaking with the sacred, happens to be the tarot. So now I want to do a quick history, which is slide 9. We begin with the tarocchi. And so the reason that I'm going through this as quickly as I can is because in order to really unlock the magic of the Witch's Wisdom Tarot, to really manifest that magic and yours, you kind of need to understand what makes it unique and special, and what it offers that is not available in what pre-existed it, right? So there are like 3 or 4 crucial events real fast, I promise, in the history of tarot. The first is this, the tarocchi, and it's the appearance of the tarot in the 14th century, in the 1400s rather, just as witches were disappearing. It appears in Italy. There were 2 types of cards. They were unnamed and unnumbered for a very long time. 22 were these very mysterious figures that were called trumps, and 56 cards that were organized into suits, or they got to be called pips. And it was kind of difficult to see some of them, like the Visconti deck, which was an early deck. They're spades or swords. This will be familiar to those of you practicing Wicca. Hearts or cups, clubs or wands, diamonds or coins. And originally they were used for games, for gaming and gambling, but very quickly they were put to use for fortune telling, for seeing the future. And that was done primarily by women in Italy. And then in the late 18th century, theories about the mystical origins of the tarot started to appear, its origins and its purpose. And there was a lot of interesting sort of esoteric stuff that started to percolate in the 1800s. And I could talk about that forever, but we don't have time. None of it was ever corroborated. A lot of it lingers sort of in the myths of origin about the tarot, but none of this was ever historically corroborated. But its reinvention as an esoteric path for kind of spiritual awakening had begun. And the next major historical event was in 1910. And that is slide 10, with the creation in 1910 by the artist Pamela Coleman Smith and the writer Arthur Waite.
The Witch's Tarot, and look at, she's doing all the interpretations for them.
You got to turn off your microphone. I hear babies. Okay. Chris, can you mute mics?
What does that do?
Shoot, you guys.
Thank you, Celia. Okay, so here we go. All right. So in 1910, an artist called Pamela Coleman Smith, very interesting woman, and a writer, Arthur Waite, both of whom were initiates in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was this esoteric magical society that appeared at the turn of the last century. Yeah, right? The late 1900s, early 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. British group, although Irish also belong. They created a tarot deck, and it revolutionized the appearance and the meaning and the use of the tarot. It's now called the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, Rider for short, the Rider deck. And here you see the Magician, which is the first card in the deck. So just extremely briefly, the framework of this came out of the tradition in which they were working, this esoteric magical group, the Golden Dawn. They practiced kind of ceremonial magic to change consciousness at will, right? This early definition and classic definition of magic. The idea was to transform the lead of an unenlightened mind into the gold of an enlightened spirit. Not about literally about turning lead into gold, although the deck is always being consulted, right? For questions about work and money and success. You could go to slide 11, which shows, right? So we've got some greed and family, wealthy family, and the King of Pentacles, right? The tremendous contribution that Smith made as the artist was to replace the minor arcana geometric arrangement of symbols with human figures who are engaged in sort of daily activities of life with the emotions and the events. And she used the Golden Dawn's system of magical symbolism, the swords, the rods or staves, cups, and the pentacles. And I guess we got the 9s there, so you get to see them. And there you see with the aces. And these are magical tools. And in fact, the Golden Dawn had a very profound influence on the rebirth of contemporary witchcraft with these tools and the symbolism of the 4 elements, earth with the pentacles. Okay, earth with the pentacles, and go back for 1 second. Yeah, earth with pentacles, wand for fire, cups for water, swords for air. And now to the next slide, which most of you will know, but for those who don't, so the sword corresponds to the mind, fire to will in this system, water with one's emotions, and earth with the body or creativity. And they are all seen as metaphors in the Rider-Waite system, as metaphors for human life. It's had a tremendous influence on contemporary witchcraft. We can go to the correspondences here, right? The magical tools, the correspondences, the 4 elements, the aspects of nature as metaphors for human qualities, mind, will, emotions, and body. And it turned out, interestingly enough, that her imagery was incredibly useful to understand the human psyche and also to predict events. And it really does account for how it became so popular. The major arcana underwent also a major change, and that was done by Waite. And he named them, he numbered them, and he provided new interpretations. So people who think that, the tarot began with the Rider-Waite-Smith deck are mistaken. It did not. It existed for hundreds of years until Waite and Smith created new imagery, new orders, new names, and new interpretations. And that's important for those who cling to this as, as the tarot deck written in stone. It's not. So there's an image of the chariot. At the heart of all of this, though, was radical for its time, and it certainly was. I mean, the esoteric work they were doing was extraordinary, but that esoteric was nonetheless influenced. They were the creatures of their times, and in fact, it was rooted in Kabbalah, esoteric magic, Abrahamic imagery, biblical imagery, and ideas and values. And in fact, what a lot of people don't know is that both Waite and Smith left the Golden Dawn and created their own Christian esoteric order, which is why there is a tremendous amount of Christian imagery, in fact, in their deck. And over time, other esoteric systems like numerology and astrology were integrated into the tarot. And the tarot of Aleister Crowley is a really good example of that. It was used by these esotericists as a kind of meditation tool to help transform the soul. What's important that I really want to focus on for just a moment, and then we'll move on, is that there is within it, because it has this Abrahamic and pretty patriarchal view, for all of its radicalism, it still saw enlightenment, and we can go to slide 16, as an upward trajectory, right? It's an upwardly moving path away from the earth, away from the mundane cares of life, of daily life, of your life, away from the earth in order to achieve enlightenment, towards light, towards the pure energy of spirit, which we see still within, for example, within New Age traditions. And at the heart of this is this very Abrahamic idea of the separation of spirit and world, of spirit and matter, of creation and spirit. They are separate. The earthly plane is the lowest level, right, on the soul's journey. And so the minors were not important to them. And in fact, the majors had these progressions, and it's often taught this way by teachers of Tarot, and this is how they interpret it. So we can go to slide 17. The first level are what they call worldly powers. And interestingly enough, they're these very holy figures. The magician, but he is about controlling matter, which has a great deal to do with the way a lot of sort of modern people approaching witchcraft think that witchcraft is to be practiced, by controlling and manipulating nature. It is not. The priestess, the empress, the emperor, the Hierophant, and the lovers. That's desire. The next level is willpower. Will, very masculine. The Chariot, strength, wheel of fortune, justice, hangman, death, temperance, and the hermit. These are all cards of the progression of the soul as it forms its will. And finally, the last slide 19, the next level, reason, consciousness, the star, the moon, sun, judgment, the world. And we have the Fool here, this question about where the Fool actually belongs. So interesting if you look at the world, which we'll get to in a moment. So this is all about the mind and consciousness as the vehicle to transcendence, right? Body is not important here, very Victorian. It's all from here up, and it's up, up, and away from the earth. That is that's the semiotics. That's the meaning of the symbolism within the Rider-Waite deck. And it's there whether it's a cat deck or a witch's deck. That message is within the deck. The journey of the soul, the journey of your life is to leave your life and to ascend into realms of pure light and pure spirit. The next historical shift, very quickly, comes in the 1980s with a new system of knowledge, psychology, and especially Jungian psychology. And there were a bunch of tarot readers and writers, mostly women, Rachel Pollack, Mary Greer, a bunch of others, James Wanless also. And they also see the deck and the order of the major arcana as a sequence of progression, again, but now the three levels are the human psyche. So there's consciousness, subconscious, the consciousness is sort of the outer concerns of society, and then the subconscious, the inward search for who we are, and it's the superconsciousness, which is spiritual awareness. Jung's archetypes are used to explain the importance of the majors, why it has such power for people. His idea of synchronicity as to why tarot decks work. And the minor arcana become very important again now because of their depictions of daily life. And I guess we could go to slide 21. What's going on is still rooted in the air, in the mind, in consciousness. And when you look at the deck, from our modern perspective, you can really see the influence of Freud, who was like revolutionary in 1910. When you look at the air cards, they're virtually every single one of them is some explication, some illustration of a neurotic impulse or anxiety. Right? It's the afflictions of the mind as opposed to the powers and the blessings and the gifts of the mind. Air in particular. So big deal. Art of changing consciousness at will and then changing circumstances. And it sort of meshes with this humanist psychological point of view, that buried patterns of the past, how we create our future, discover the hidden mysteries of who we are. And they've kind of become enmeshed and integrated. But still, it's useful for self-knowledge. It's useful for spiritual awakening. We could go to 22 and it works remarkably well which is why it's become the most popular tarot deck in the world. And it's the basis, it's like the gold standard. It's used again and again and again and again, you know, only now it's cats or superheroes or fairy tale figures or witches. But the symbolism and the message and the essential image remains the same. And so the spiritual lessons that are being taught, the advice that is being given is a problem. It was always a problem for me as a witch. Yeah, any system of divination will tell us something, but the quality of that something depends on the values within the system, which is why I've spent time on this, because the values within the system of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck are largely Abrahamic. And that is true for countless progeny. They are patriarchal, they are Abrahamic, they are transcendent. We can go to slide 24. And they are full of Christian, biblical, pre-Christian, you know, also from the Bible, the Old Testament, full of biblical imagery and messages and messaging. And again and again, you know, signaling people that the cares of their lives, of daily life, is occurring on a lower plane, on an earthly plane, and is to be overcome in order to reach this higher plane, this higher heavenly realm of pure consciousness and energy and transcendent spirit. And I think it's exemplified best in this card. So this is like the world. This is, you make the journey of the major arcana in the Rider-Waite-Smith cosmology, and that's the world. I'm looking, I do not see it. I see a figure floating in space, surrounded by symbols of the four directions. Here, symbols expressed as the archangels. And these are the Christian or the biblical symbols of the four directions and the four elements. And the person is floating. There is no world to be seen. They have left the world. And in fact, the interpretation is the individual triumphs over all things, especially material things, and comes into the divine light. Slide 26. Enlightenment means leaving the earth behind. And that's the value system at the heart of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot and all of its progeny, including virtually all witches tarot, so-called witches tarot decks. Spirit and psyche are part of the mystery, but they're only part, and something essential is missing. And what's missing is witches' wisdom, which is the wisdom of spirit embodied by earth. We're not going to take a break. We're going to keep going. Okay. I know I'm talking fast, but I want to get through this so we can get to the Witch's Wisdom Tarot now. So we could put up slide 28. Do we not love this? There is the fox. There is the fox. And you met the fox a few minutes ago. I was thrilled when Hay House asked me to create a Witch's Tarot. Because I'd always had a problem with this biblical imagery and the ubiquitousness of this imagery in the derivative decks. I used the Robin Hood deck, and I still use it. And one reason I liked it was that it was based upon the Rider deck, but it had made a few changes that I thought were very smart, like the Devil card. Which was no longer the devil, but something in it, but essentially still cleaved to that deck. And it just, something important was always missing. And the question was, what was a true witch's tarot? You know, what was the wisdom that would be in a tarot deck created from a witch's point of view? And I knew that rather than bringing my conscious thinking, you know, oh, I'll change that, or, you know, I think it should look like this. I figured that to create a new method of divination, a new divinatory tool, I should ask the oldest, using the oldest divinatory tool. And so I journeyed. After I said yes, I journeyed. And for those who just very quickly, journeying is one of the most ancient shamanic techniques. It alters our consciousness with the use of steady percussive rhythm, and brings you into realms of spirit where you work with spirits and guides and allies who answer your questions and offer you teachings and dismember you and put you back together and bless you with gifts of healing and insight and communion. And if you're lucky, after 40 years, I realized one of the greatest gifts, which is the gift of sight, of seeing not just in realms of spirit, but of seeing spirit in realms in which we live our daily lives. And so I asked, what do I need to know to create a witch's wisdom tarot? And it turns out, after a great search, we had found the right artist for this project, Danielle Barlow, who is calls herself a hedge witch in Devon, England. I've been practicing for about 20 years, and I didn't know much about her except that she, considered herself a hedge witch, and I had seen her art, and I was like, okay, yes, this is the person. And before we even spoke, we both journeyed. So interesting to me, because she's been practicing, I guess, for about 20 years, and I'd been practicing for 40. And journeying in here in Devon, England, was a younger witch using the same method, the ancient method, practicing witchcraft in a deeply shamanic way. And without our ever having spoken and knowing what the other was doing, we both journeyed, and we both asked the same question: what do we need to know to create a new deck, a witch's deck? And we were both told the same thing. We were told very simply, very directly, very forcefully, begin with the elements, not their symbols, not with swords and cups and pentacles and these intervening images that human beings have created, but with the elements themselves. Ask them what the world needs to know, and they will show you, and they will tell you. Okay, divination, you have to ask the right question to get the right answer. And we were told what the question was. We were told where to start, and we were told what question to ask. What do we need to know? And that was the question. So we journeyed. We journeyed about 200 journeys all told over a little over a year. We wrote them down, we shared them, we discussed them, we discerned their meaning, we determined which image captured the teaching of the journey. And then Danielle drew, sent them to me, I responded, and she brought her own interpretation and inspiration to the particulars of the images. She did some really extraordinary things that were just profound. And I brought my skills as a writer, because I know that words are magic, and I wanted to do something that had never been done before, but to write the deck so that even if you didn't have the images, you could open the book and receive the messages and the teachings. I wanted it not just to explain, but to transport, to enchant, and basically to cast a spell of enlightenment that was embodied, and to do what no tarot text had done before. So it was a joy. And we created it trusting what we were shown, and trusting each other, and trusting, nervous, but trusting our ability to interpret and to translate those visions into images and into words. We didn't know if it would work, though. We put it together. We shared what we had been shown, but would it work? And the answer is, yeah, apparently it's working. And one of the things I want to do is talk to you about it. In fact, it seems to be working better than we could have imagined. And it's doing things with people beyond any expectation that we had had. It was a privilege that I had to work with a group that came together in Michigan when it first came out, to explore and to work with it, and the stories that they were coming back with and the impact that it was having on them and how it was guiding them was unique to each of them and was unbelievably accurate and really profound. And I think that that's because of the method that we used to find it, the respect that we gave it, and the energy that revealed itself again and again in it. So it's practical. I actually had somebody ask me, do a reading with me, and they asked me, should I sell my car? And I don't know the answer, but it's also deeply spiritual. This deck is a kind of spiritual technology. It's not a tin can. It's not two tin cans with a string between it. And it has revealed over the year of working with it to me, and I'm interested in hearing from you, a very deep purpose. And that purpose sort of often determines the way in which it answers. So you can ask this very practical question, but the deck itself wants you to know something really profoundly important. It wants you to know why you're here. And it wants you to know why you're here now, in this body, in the life that you're leading at this time and place in the world as it is right now, working with this particular oracle, with this tarot, because there are thousands out there, what it has to say to you, the guidance it wants to share with you. And it is the voice of Mother Earth, of her children and their spirits. And they will take you on amazing journeys where you want to go or where you need to go. But the one thing they want you to know is like why and how selling your car or whatever the daily life experiences that you're asking is connected to your purpose. Because in finding your purpose, you are finding your strength. And in finding your strength, you are coming home to a planet in need, that needs you now, and needs you to know certain things, and needs you to know how to live here, and needs you to engage in healing. As I said at the beginning, that this was a healing deck. And throughout, the presence in this deck is benevolent and wise and nourishing and deeply loving. And the guidance that it offers is truly always in your best interest for creating your best life, so you can learn how to contribute to creating the best life for Mother Earth and her other children. So I want to stop and do a practice, which is, I think we can do this on our own. And perhaps if everyone has a deck except for Ted.
Ted has a tarot deck, but it is not a Witch's Wisdom tarot deck.
I want you to work with the Witch's Wisdom tarot deck. So, Chris, do you have your deck nearby?
I do have my deck nearby.
Maybe you could do a breakout with Ted.
Unfortunately, our breakout sessions are not available to us at this time.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Ted, Chris is going to pull a card for you, and you're going to tell him what it is in the chat. Can you do that?
I can do that, absolutely.
And you can give him the essence of it.
Okay.
And then we can later provide him with more.
Sounds good.
If he doesn't get the deck. Okay. So rather than do breakout groups, because of time and because everybody has one, I'd like to just take like 3 minutes, because you can go back to this later. Just take your deck. I'm going to go more into the techniques of working with the deck and particularities in November, but just take it, hold it to your heart for a moment and thank it for being your oracle. And shuffle the deck. And the best way with this deck is a drop shuffle, because it's very large. The more I work with it, the smaller it seems to get, and the less stiff it gets. But it's not meant for a riffle shuffle, right? It's not like you're doing cards in Vegas. You lift and drop, lift and drop. You lift and drop, lift and drop, lift and drop from one hand into the other. And just as you're doing that, focus on the question, what do I need to know? What do I need to know? And when you're ready, pull a single card as you're asking yourself that question. And you can pull up the book and read. If you've pulled a major arcana, you might skip over the wisdom section, which is long, and just go directly to the essence and the counsel. Write it down. Write what the card is. You can write down the essence if you want. And let's see. I'll give you another minute. And is Chris, is there a way for people to raise their hands?
Yes, people should be able to raise their hands in the participants window or clicking on your
Cool. Because I would love to have 1 or 2 or 3 people share briefly, unfortunately briefly. I'm flying through.
You can also just send me a quick chat message.
Okay.
Amy has raised her hand.
Yeah.
Amy, would you like to go, please?
Sure thing. I got the 2 of water. Which is no surprise because last night, as I was sitting in silence, my guidance was that I needed to start playing more because I've just been way too serious about everything. So it's the perfect card.
Okay. And one of my favorites. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
So, thank you. I could ask you how you're going to play, but no. Well, but thank you.
Margaret, would you like to talk about your card?
Ace of water. Why doesn't this surprise me? That's what I just typed in.
Yep. How does that relate to you right now?
That's a lot to take in. It's okay. I think as an artist, everything I do happens is based on emotion and memory. And I think it can be very overwhelming sometimes, and it's very overwhelming to process all of it, but it's very apropos.
Very nice. A lot of folks are not surprised. I'm getting a not surprised by their cards. Patricia, would you like to talk about yours? Please unmute if you would like to.
I'm still learning. I'm very new at this. I got the 5 of Earth, and I've noticed as I've been practicing this week, so I just got the deck this week, that I've been getting a lot of 5s. And I mean, I'm in the process of looking for new work. I'm freelancing, but I'm looking for permanent work. So maybe, and I've been thinking this time that I've just been doing this freelance, it's kind of been a time for me to refresh kind of, and just let everything go. And so it kind of reminds me of that. Like I
Thank
said,
you.
I'm really new to this.
A few other people have, a lot of folks have pulled Earth. Someone pulled a 3 of Earth, someone pulled a 4 of Earth, someone pulled a 2 of Earth. There's a lot of
Wow.
Earths.
2, 3, 4, 5. Wait.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. 2.
Mhm, mhm.
Cora, would you like to talk about yours, please?
I drew the 4 of fire. And that's appropriate because this afternoon I was talking to my husband and I was saying something doesn't feel right here. I need to cleanse home and do a home and hearth blessing or something. And now I get this card. Well, very appropriate, of course. There have been people here that brought a lot of, well, let's say negativity without too much detail. And I got the feeling it made me restless. So I think this is very appropriate and it's good advice.
Good. Desiree, would you like to talk about yours?
Sure. I got the 6 of air. And it's about balance, and it definitely resonates because just feeling that kind of like overworking, like having anxiety and then overworking and realizing it's just kind of losing the connection with the divine. So just a feeling like, let's rebalance and just slow this down and just trust that everything's coming as it needs to.
Yeah. Patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Allowing rather than rushing. Yeah.
And Lauren, would you like to talk about your card?
Sure. So I pulled the 7 of water. I'm also still very new to this. This is actually my first tarot deck, so kind of still getting a feel for everything. So it's peace is what it's called, and I think that it is fitting for kind of what I've been thinking about and working through right now, and kind of trying to cultivate peace in my life and with others around me and in the world even. So I think that it's given me a lot to think about.
That it's a really fascinating card because it's a set of circumstances that it's one of the more seemingly abstract cards, right? When you look at it, it looks like a neuron, and you have to really look closely to understand what's going on because you're seeing it from above. And it's a set of circumstances in which there is a lack of, right? It's a watering hole. And so all these animals come, and you would think that it would create mayhem and chaos and violence, and it doesn't. Yeah, that nature has this way of honoring what is necessary, and there's peace even in these circumstances that would seem, that we would think from our human perspective would be provocative and sources of conflict. But when we look to the natural world says no, we don't need to engage in conflict, that in fact there is enough for everyone. There can be enough, and we can still be at peace. It's one of the more important cards, I think, in some ways, on this sort of broad way. Sorry. Anyway, I don't talk about them all, Phyllis. Don't. Okay.
There are 2 other cards I think we'd like to talk a little bit about. Heidi, would you like Kara to talk about your card, please?
I got the goddess of fire, and it talked about being a crone, and I just had my birthday.
Happy birthday.
And it's my 60th. I'm like, I'm reading going, okay, yeah, there were some things in it, but the rest of it's like, okay.
The magic is working.
Thank
And
you.
would you care to tell us about your card?
I got initiation. And for me, it's very interesting because I was, the words and essence of it, purification, let go of the past, go within, plunge into the unknown, getting ready to plunge into the unknown and changing sort of a career. And as I was piecing a potion, I was making a salt bath with roses and rosemary. And I could not remember the word that I needed. And it was purification. And there it is. And that's what I was not remembering. I just couldn't think of the word. And there it is. So yeah, letting go of the past is a good idea too, in some ways. So yeah, it was a good card.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, so I want to introduce you quickly because there are friends in this deck that some of you may already be working with. And if you're just starting, I want you to know that there are these guides. Cora introduced you to one of them. So Chris, if you'll put up, yeah, slide 30, Fox over here and over there. Fox appeared right away, drove Danielle insane initially. And I was like, no, this is all good. Darting this way and that way, because at the beginning, that's where we were. We were sort of we were being rushed by images and spirits and expressions that wanted to share with us. And Fox was like, oh no, I know this because I have one. They follow the scent. It's not linear. So you just trust. So Fox is there. When Fox appears, you trust your instinct and your animal sensibility and you follow the trail. The next was the Ace of Water, who also appeared. There we go, Margaret. Grandmother Toad, who is unbelievably wise and who takes human form periodically throughout this deck. And so you have to be clever to see her. But she's very old. She is the crone. She is the keeper of liminal space, where your emotions and your emotions as you feel them in your body are instructing you to pay attention, that you are in fact in a liminal space. The next one is the Briar Rose. And the Briar Rose appears in various places, also with the ancestor, where you'll see her bleeding from the prick of the thorn of the Briar Rose. The Briar Rose is a very powerful teacher, that thorns protect roses, that we may be pricked and bleed, but there is a blossoming that is always present. So no matter what the suffering, the teaching is to seek the beauty, to find the beauty. So when you see that, you know, not to be preoccupied by the pain, but to move past it to the blessing. And the 10 of Earth, this is the cosmic consciousness card. You should go watch Fantastic Fungi. This was an amazing journey that we both had. And this is the reminder, and it also appears throughout the deck in various places. This guide is telling you that you are part of a web that is alive and conscious and embodied and communicating to you and hearing you and answering you, and also speaking with the other life forms on the planet and carrying messages to and fro for them. And that you are more than you think you are. So when you see the little mushroom appear in the card, pay attention to what is being communicated by you and to you. And they will guide you through the deck into realms of spirit and back into this world where you're going to discover a world that is full of wisdom and wildness and wonderment and revelation and raw magic, which I couldn't resist and put in every single card of all types and textures, from ancient Devon spells to summon pixies to simply Taoists standing in the rain. And overall, at all times, was the Great Mother, which is the next slide. And it was her spirit, Anima Mundi, and her expression embodied by Earth itself, this benevolent, generous, loving energy, which was really powerful as I was writing and is ever present in this deck. You will not find tornadoes and earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes, although those are all aspects of the Great Mother of Earth. I think in part because the lessons are there, but the things that we have forgotten are the benevolence and the love and the compassion and the generosity of the earth, and its wisdom and its innate grace. And those are the things that we need to be reminded of. But she is kick-ass. So there are the fives. And the fives, which is, I'm gonna skip over that practice for the moment. And let's go, Chris, to, do we see them? I'm sorry, I lost my, okay. We'll come back to the fives. Okay, so I'm going to jump through and I want to get to those. Can we, let's see, what are the fives? Sorry, guys. Because I'm going to jumping. Yeah, can you jump me to slide 52? Ha! Now that's amazing. That was magic, everybody. All right. So we did not create this deck, as I said, with conscious intention, except to ask the right question and pay very careful attention and be very good students of what we were taught, what was shared with us. It turned out that the aces were these moments of illumination, which we'll go back to, that were extraordinary, that extended and deepened our appreciation for how nature embodies the divine. But the fives were the messages, not the tornadoes and the volcanoes, but these are the messages of challenge and choice. So every one of these in each of the elements is an expression, as was mentioned by Patricia, right? That she was getting a lot of fives. These are cards of challenge and choice. If you do this, these are the consequences. If you choose something else, different consequences. What are your choices? What are you choosing? They are a call to responsibility. They are the mother saying, think about what you're doing. Not just, don't act impulsively. Look carefully, decide, think carefully. Look at the consequences of your actions. Look at the consequences of your choices. Look at what you are choosing and make a good choice. Understand, that sometimes sacrifice is required. So the Five of Air is a card of sacrifice, that a choice is made to create a family, to be a great hunter, but you lose insulation and protection from the elements. In five, you see a healthy polar bear and an emaciated one. What you put in the water is carried everywhere. What do we choose to put in the waters of life? Do we put life into the waters of life, or do we put death and destruction through our pollution and our toxins and our choices? What do we choose? In the card of fire, and given what's happening, in the West and is moving into the Midwest. What choices are we making that precipitate change? Because fire is the element of transformation. Are these joyful changes or are these tragic changes? What are the choices that we're making? Are the woods on fire because of the bad choices, or is it the brilliant color of flame as the world goes through its seasonal cycle of transformation? Is it organic or inorganic? Is it natural and part of the cycle of life, or is it destructive of life? And the Five of Earth is similar. It is the cycle of life, that you see the mother of the hare, the skeleton buried in the earth, along with the little rabbit warren where the babies are sheltered and protected as the mother, is out in the world, in life. And it's a reminder of the cycles, that things live for a time and die, that there's a constant process of transformation, of letting go, and of something new emerging. And like nature, right? So these are the challenges, the dire consequences, the dangers, but along with the challenges, there are choices that are offered. And it's an expression of concern and of summoning, given the thousands of years of separation and domination and destruction of the natural world, that the deck is telling us that it's the task of our time, it's our responsibility to heal the damage that we've done to the world and to ourselves. And to do so, we have to struggle with grief and powerlessness and responsibility, but everything we need is all around us and a part of us, because we are a part of all that is around us. The heart of the Witch's Wisdom Tarot is the unity of spirit and creation, of energy and embodiment. It's not a choice where you leave the earth behind in order to transcend into higher realms of spirit or light. What is light? Is it a wave or a particle? The answer is yes. What is the divine? Is it energy or embodiment? The answer is yes. One thing is constantly becoming another. Right? The energy of air and water and fire and earth, all of the elements of earth, are becoming life. And life is creating the conditions, the air, the water, the soil, all the healthy conditions that create and nourish and support and sustain life. It's a profound spiritual principle, and it's embodied by creation. And the wisdom of that is offered through this deck. Nature is a spiritual teacher, and the world is charged through with divinity and everything we need to remedy the damage that we've done and to heal ourselves and our planet is all around and within us. And it is a part of who we are and who we're meant to be. And so the deck in each of the elements, and I guess, Chris, we could go back to the aces for a moment, which was, I don't know. Yes, slide 52. Each of these elements, and then the expressions in the 14 cards of the elements, are full of animals and the elements and the environments, the habitats, the homes of them. And they are sharing with us who they are, because they are part of us as we are part of them. And they are showing us a deeper magic than the magic that comes through the Rider-Waite-Smith and ceremonial Golden Dawn traditions that influenced witchcraft so much at the beginning. Earth is telling us it's about embodiment, but it's about healing. And air is about consciousness, but consciousness of love as the agency of interconnection. And fire is the element of transformation, of power or will, which is such a thing in that other deck and in there. And here it's, yeah, willpower is important and courage is important and passion is important. But really, fire is the element in our proper relationship to it. It is the element of joy. That joy is the agency of true transformation, of true change. And here it's expressed in the cauldron of community, which nourishes all of us. And water is the element of our emotions, but we're called to feel them embodied, right? In our bodies. How do we feel? How do we feel joy? How do we feel love? How do we feel desire and happiness and worry and all of the emotions that we're given and blessed with? And to realize, we think of water as the element of connection, and it is. Whatever we put in the water is carried throughout creation. So it's also the element of stories, the stories that we tell ourselves and that we tell to one another. And in each of the elemental cards, what we come to see are the lost aspects of ourselves, that we're not separate from nature, that we are our nature, that we share the breath of life, the waters of life, the experiences of joy and change, and the magic and the blessings of embodiment. The 10s, I guess, we'll go to 53. The 10s are the cards of communion. Also, not intended, but there they were, expressing themselves to us. Can we do 53? Do we have 53? I think it's 53. These are all cards that urge us into communion with the divine as it expresses itself in the natural world. The 10 of earth through the mushrooms, the murmuration of air, the starlings, about whose mystery of movement is still not understood by science. The 10 of water, the communion of all beings in the waters of life. And the 10 of fire as the communion we create for each other, once again, of community, that we light a path, that our single illuminations are offered to the world to light the path for those who will follow after us. Again and again, I guess we could go to 54. The vision is that revelation, right? The revelation of the Bible. If you see God, you go blind. The revelation of this deck is that seeing the sacred is the cure for the blindness of our spirits. That the divine is energy and embodiment, constantly moving from one aspect into the other, and spirit and earth are one. And the lesson that we're being asked to learn in this deck is to see it, to see the sacred in creation, and to learn from it, and to learn how to live in a sacred way. And so those are the values of the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. That's what's being communicated again and again and again in its beauty. And so now you know the waters in which you swim, unlike most people who are swimming in tarot decks without understanding the values of what's being communicated to them. We know the waters in which we're swimming, and we can learn what we've forgotten from the shapeshifters, the crafters, the craftsmen, the witches, the messengers, the goddesses, who are these figures that bridge the world of human and nature and divine. I guess we can put them up quickly. And we can change shape, which is always the great stories, right? Tellier's and all the stories are the stories of how we shapeshift, of how we become salmon and bird and bear and ram and wolf, because each one of them has a teaching for us, and it's a teaching about themselves, what they know about how to live here in a way that contributes to the well-being of all life, that we have forgotten. We're the only creatures on the planet who have forgotten that this is how we are meant to live. And that is what it means to live in a sacred way, on a sacred planet, to contribute through our lives, through our magic, through the purposes that we come to see, to recognize that are our gifts, to make our magic and to offer it to the world, and to make the world a better place through that, for our having been here. and the shapeshifters. And let's go front. These are the messengers. These are the witches. Are they not wonderful? Back to the witches, and then to the craftsmen, who are the those who work the forces, except for the green man of earth, who is absolutely primal, who work with the forces of nature in harmonious ways. And then, of course, the goddesses. I wanted to go through all of the wisdom and the wonder of these minor arcanas, but I think we'll move on in the time that we have left to some of the majors and some of the practices. Yeah, you will discover that air is a teacher of consciousness of love, fire of joy, water of the embodiment of our emotions, and earth of our healing. And I think I would ask you, yeah, let's do this practice. It's worth taking 3 minutes to shuffle and ask. Let's put it up, Chris, you just had it there. What do I need to learn from nature? What do I need to learn from nature? What do I need to know? What do I need to learn from nature? And we'll just do it individually. So to your heart, drop, shuffle. Drop, shuffle, and pull a card asking, what do I need to learn from nature? And write down what it is. Look at the essence. You can go back later and read the wisdom. Look at the counsel. All right. Does anybody want to share?
Hi, this is Amy. I'll share.
Wonderful.
I got the Wisdom Keeper,
No.
which was kind of a surprise. So the essence is traditional wisdom, life, illumination, revelations in daily existence, and spontaneous magic, which kind of makes exact sense for where I am at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If anybody else would like to share, please let me know in the chat. Margaret, would you like to go?
This card makes sense. I haven't pulled it before, so it's a nice surprise. This one is surprising to me.
Could you show the card?
Yeah,
please.
Strength. Strength. So I'm still taking this in.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret. Tina, would you like to go, please?
Read this.
Okay. Eileen, would you care to go? I'm sorry, we're having some problems here. Hold on, please. I think we're both hitting the same button, Eileen. Try now.
Am I good?
You are good.
Okay, I got the messenger of air. which the counsel is remember your childhood dreams, how you could fly, how you woke in the morning knowing anything was possible. And this, I'm actually getting choked up thinking about this. I just left a career of 35 years. And it was my dream career. It was everything I ever wanted in life. And so now I need to figure out what's the next dream. You know, what did that little girl want at this point? So this was very moving.
Thank you very, very much. Donna?
I got Guardian. And I'm also still reading it, but it says you're coming into a true sense of yourself and your ability to create the life that you want, which is very true. I've been making a lot of changes in my life, and I'm re-looking at my career and what I truly want to do for the remainder of my working time.
Thank you. Laura?
I got 2 of Earth, which was funny because in the first drawing I got Goddess of Earth. So again, maternal, which the message I got, I don't have a good relationship with my mom. So the message I got was, it's okay, you don't need it because Mother Earth is here. So that was really cool.
Very nice. Marie, I'm sorry.
Oops. Hey, hello.
Hello.
Anybody sees me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so, okay. This is my card and it's the maze and it's talking about inhibition and stop making a plan, let go and do the opposite of what you planned. So the interesting thing is I first got the mother bear before, and actually I do have a certain problem to come into the card and into the deck, and I think this is what it's reflecting right now. Yeah. So I have it for a while and I could not get into it for some reason. So, well, let's see. Well,
let go and go.
Probably. Yeah. Just have a try. Yeah.
Yes, that's what it's just release any expectation and just.
Yeah, I think I really love the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot, and I've been doing it for something like 39 years or something.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to let go.
My advice would be, it's not either or, it's both and.
Okay.
It's not, there are times when I have a derivation, the Robin Wood deck, I use it. It's not, you're not leaving your husband for a hot boyfriend. You can have both. Just kidding, right? This one has an emphasis on light and spirit, and all of which is part of the mystery. And this is about how the mystery embodies itself in creation, in the natural world, in us as part of nature. So they can work together. And one is appropriate in one set of circumstances and this in another.
So it is really, so I was kind of surprised that it didn't go as easily as I expected.
Yeah.
And for instance, I also read your first book about witchcraft, and I found it so plausible. And I expected this would be easy, but it is not. It is not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes and no. I think that that decks that have presence in them are responsive, right? And they reflect back to us a lot of what we're showing them. The Crowley deck is a perfect example of that, right? That people think it's a dark deck, and it's not. It's just that it will show you all the neuroses and anxieties. If that's what if you're worried, that's exactly what it's going to show you, right? It's not a dark deck. It's just showing you your neuroses and anxieties. So in a certain sense, what you bring to the deck is what it will reflect back. So if you're resistant, or if it's difficult, it'll say, yeah, you're having a hard, it's confusing, isn't it? Yeah, I know.
Yes, it is.
So I'd say one card at a time. As play.
Yes.
As play.
Okay.
To play with it. To play with it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And you might take it outdoors to work with it.
Yes, and let maybe your mind flow and see what comes, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, is there anybody else?
There is one more that I would like to get to. Hold on, please. Tina, is your computer working now?
It is. Sorry about that. It just went, I'm like, what? I can't move my mouse. And then I saw everything fade. I was like, no, don't go away. So here we are. First, I wanted to reiterate what Phyllis just said. Yeah, play, do the one card at a time. And this has to even do with the cards that I chose. Sometimes I find myself even just going back to basics and taking it slow and just listening to each card and working with each card, even for a day, a week, a month, you know, you work with it and it'll work with you. And yeah, so does that make any sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
And let those emotions come to you too. Like Phyllis mentioned something earlier about feeling them. And we don't often pay attention to how those things feel in our bodies, but the cards you feel them in your body as well. But you have to listen, you got to feel. It's hard. Just keep going with it. It'll be great. So my new card was initiation, which I was like, hey, wait a second. I was like, no, it does make sense. Letting go of the past. I find myself, that's a common theme in my life. And as I grow older, I get better at it. But I'm still finding myself, I need to do that now. Even most recently last month, there was a huge cathartic event that happened. And I let a whole bunch of stuff go that I thought I had let go a long time ago, but I really didn't. Who knows, maybe still some of it's there, right? So part of that is, and then the other part of this plunging into the unknown. We have a lot of unknowns in our life right now, and it brings great anxiety, for those tangible things, hey, how are we going to survive in the future? How are we going to pay this bill? How are we going to take care of our child and all that? Then trusting that there's a plan. And if I pay attention, I will follow the right path and make the right choices. And so all of that and more.
Thank you. That's awesome.
That card also is so much about letting go of things that we think are so important, but really aren't, right? So she's got that giant pack and she's got that, the hat and the coat and the boots, and the animals are like, don't need the hat, don't need the boot, and the foxes are like baby foxes and they're like, oh, let's just. So there's this shift, wait a minute, maybe, if I start this journey from a different perspective and I let go of the things that I think are so important, the things that are really important will show themselves to me and the journey gets lighter. That's part of the thing about getting older. They say, oh, and you start giving away everything. Yeah, so because you're focused on these essential things that are extremely important, and everything shifts in relationship to that. And it's like an unburdening, which does not deny practical realities. It's a question of, it's like a shift. It's just a shift. It's a shift. Thank you. And I'm just so touched that you're all sharing and what you're experiencing. I'm just going to take one more moment before I leave the minors. It's really interesting to me how many of you pulled major arcana cards. One of the things that's very common in our culture is that it's considered primitive and naive and childish to anthropomorphize nature, right? To say, oh, trees have spirits or consciousness, or that mushrooms have consciousness, or or dogs have feelings, right? I mean, it was that bad when I was growing up, right? That animals didn't have feelings. It's not a mistake. The mistake is not projecting human qualities onto animals and plants and the planet. The mistake is our failure to understand that nature, that the animals and the plants, that the air and the fire and all of it are full of wisdom and blessings and power and magic. They're part of us. So that we're projecting human emotions and human feelings on, that's not the mistake. The mistake is in not understanding that we are air and fire and water. We are consciousness, but so too is my dog, and so are the mushrooms, and so is it, right? That everything is intertwined and interconnected, and there is spirit, and there is consciousness, and there are emotions, and there's magic, and there's blessings, and it's a part of us. So there are these huge chunks of ourselves that we don't understand because we don't, right? Because we're human. We're different. We're apart. We're superior. We're at the top of the pyramid. It's like we have completely disembodied ourselves and disconnected ourselves from this web in which we are enmeshed. And we cannot know ourselves fully until we know them. And we cannot be whole until we're connected with them. And we cannot fully experience our purpose until we see ourselves in relationship to this web into which our lives are interwoven. This tarot deck began to reveal a world that encompasses our humanity, but it stretches us far beyond our cultural and our conscious limits, and not just into realms of spirit or your deep psyche, but into the realm of creation. So you're breathing with trees, right? And you're swimming with salmon, and you are eating the body of the mother. It's not a symbolic act, and nor is it. And they all have things to teach us. If we had time, I'd go back and go through some of the wisdom, like the wisdom of the whales who understand grief but dive deeper into beauty, or the murmuration, which is to let go and allow that there is an ecstatic wonder beyond the rational and the knowing, where everything is participating in this kind of ecstasy. Or the Seven of Fire, the lion and the briar rose, that it is possible to be courageous without being violent or angry. Or the Two of Water, which is the otters, that everything is in harmony except us, because we've removed ourselves, and that through our hearts, water, the element of emotion, the otters are reminding us to play, that the love, the happiness, the playfulness that we put into the waters of our life, into the feelings that we share with others, comes back to us, and that what we put into the waters of life is what we take from the waters of life, and what others will take from the waters of our life. And it's funny that there were several people with Two of Earth, because I pulled, when I was creating the outline and that knowing that I was going to run out of time, that I was going to be able to cover it all, and wanting to do these practices, I was like, what do I need to know? It was like the Two of Earth came up, and it came up immediately after I had just brought bear. I have a bear skin that was killed in a sacred way and was basically sort of given to me. And I brought him into my office because I needed a lot of strength. And I pulled the Two of Earth and was told, that remember, and just remember and share. This is what you need to share, that Mother Earth and all of her children our family, our loved ones, our teachers, our healers, our guides on the path to wholeness and to home. And when we come home, we spend time with nature, in nature, with the natural world. Our own natures are made better. We start to heal. We start to find the lost parts of ourselves. We start to rediscover who we are because we're remembering where we are. And that helps us to remember why we're here. That's the wolf pack, the Nine of Earth, which I adore. So, so that takes us briefly into the majors. And we got to the majors after the elements, and it was clear that the wisdom was right, because at that point it was 100% vivid that we lived in a world that embodied the divine, and that was full of blessings and teachings and wisdoms and guidance in how to live and how to be healthy and how to be happy and how to be peaceful and all these things that we're desperately in need of and that are right there and that are part of us that we're just detached from. And I was like, okay, so the great organizing principle is that all of life is creating the conditions, contributing to the conditions, air, soil, water, everything, that nourish and sustain, create, nourish, sustain life. That's how it works. Cool. And then it was like, okay, so now it's time to do the major arcana. And that was the first card we saw. You can put it back up, Chris. It was like this shock. And it was a shock. And we sent it to Hay House and they were like totally freaked out. They totally freaked out. I was like, okay, let me explain this to you. Yeah, you should be freaked out. But that is the world as it is now. And it was very interesting because it was the first card that appeared, not the last in the journey of the major arcana. It was the first. And this was what I saw. And that figure is the pilgrim. But this is at the beginning of the journey because the major arcana is a spiritual journey. You know, which way is it going? Here, she's leaving the sky world, the world that says, oh, spirit, oh, you know, the world itself only exists for us and we can do with it whatever we please and extract and pollute and destroy and ignore with, you know, the consequences. And the result is the world on fire, which is the world we live in now. And she's leaving and she's saying, no, that world is false and dangerous. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going home. I'm going somewhere else. And she's walking into the, very English with her boots and her pack, she's walking off into the natural world. And if you look carefully, there are little figures, other figures who are leaving. So it was quite a shock, but it was like, look, you asked the right question. What do we need to know? And this is what you need to know. So suck it up and let's keep going. And the next card was initiation. We can, yeah, then you see the contrast. World, okay. So we'll come back to the pilgrim. So initiation was the second card. And there she is, she's put down her pack and taken off her coat and the badger's carrying her boot off, etc. She's washing her face and drinking from the waters of life, cleansing, rehydrating, receiving a blessing from the waters of life. And it's very different from the judgment card, which is, which, right, precedes the world. And are, you know, the bodies rising from their graves, called, I guess, by the angel Gabriel, and ready to rise into heaven, into spirit, into, right? No, this is initiation. It is a death. It's a letting go of what no longer serves your life, but it's an initiation. It's a beginning. So it's a rebirth. And it moves on from there. And what we realized was that the person who was appearing in these journeys was the fool. She's not the fool. She's nobody's fool. You can go back, if you would, Chris, to the yeah, this is her. This is her at the end of the journey. The world is her at the beginning. This is after she's made the journey through the major arcana. She is got a little bundle on her back. She is high stepping. She's practically dancing. Fox is with her, the totem, the guide on the adventure, where you let go and you simply go. And she embodies the message for us that her life is a prayer, and that she is able to live it as a prayer because she knows, because she has learned that she is supported from below by Mother Earth, that air, water, food, whatever she needs is always being given to her through the love and the creativity and the magic and the divinity of the divine embodied by creation. That she's supported and nourished and sustained, and therefore safe, no matter what path she chooses. And above her, right, are the stars, the starry heavens, with the paths of the future. And she can pick whatever star she wants to be guided by. Her way is secure. It's quite different. And she's clear-eyed, and she looks you straight ahead. She may not know where she's going, but she knows that whatever she chooses, she is sustained in her choice. And it's quite a contrast from the Fool, who, maybe the other way, or maybe not. Who is about to step off the cliff and would, but for the dog instinct that calls him back, is not looking where they're going, sort of naive and foolish. She is wise, and she is us. She is each of us. So just quickly, with initiation, and then the next card, I realized we were moving in the opposite direction of the Rider-Waite deck. Our major arcana was a different direction. It was into the world, into life, into the journey of your life, of our lives, as an expression of the spiritual quest. It is not about leaving the world. It is about living through the world, living through your life. And as far as I know, it's the first reversal of the major arcana in the history of the Tarot, and it makes perfect sense for a witch's Tarot. The major arcana of the Witch's Wisdom Tarot is an ancestral path of initiation, of leaving behind the values of a society that no longer serves life, of going down and into oneself, into the womb of the earth, not upward into the Father's heaven, but down into the womb of creation, and then transformed and enlightened and empowered and embodying the divine yourself. Then you return to the world as the pilgrim does, recognizing how the divine is a part of yourself and a part of the world in which you live. It's a new direction. It has new images, new messages, new characters. There's tremendous diversity, which appeared and which we respected. I guess we can do the priestess and the sun. The priestess appears at the end, not as worldly power, but as the agent who stands between the worlds, who unites the world, who knows that both worlds are one. The sun, also you see the diversity here, as a young man, sort of androgynous, and it's a card not of pride, but of vulnerability, of standing in the face of one's wound and being able to share that with the world, and so become compassionate and healer. The cards we have the sun, the moon, and the star, though they're different. But there were some very profound changes. The Tower, I think that's next, which is sort of the ultimate deus ex machina, the hand of God striking the structures that we created and expelling you. It's cataclysmic. It's divine intervention that's cataclysmic, and it's fear and anxiety, and it can be brutal and punishing, kind of like an angry Yahweh, my way or no way. Instead, we saw the maze, which is similar in the sense of things beyond your control and getting lost, but you're getting lost in order to find yourself. And the lessons of the labyrinth is that no matter what's happening on the outside, what matters is what's happening on the inside. And the energy is very gentle. So you are lost, but guided, right? And it's a reminder of that, to let go, because there's an adventure waiting to be had, and you don't have to worry. You have to trust. You have to trust that something sacred is guiding you to where you're meant to be and what you're meant to become. It's a different energy. It like the tower, it has to do with not being in control, but the energy is very gentle and slow and organic. And the point of it is the journey and who you become along the way. And that is also reflected in this card, the journey, which takes the place of the chariot. The chariot and the Rider-Waite is, you know, the chariot of, it's a biblical story. It's the chariot of fire sent by God to bring the prophet Elijah to heaven. And it's about victory and success and the rewards of a well-cultivated will, what Pollock calls conscious ego. But the key is to control your thoughts and your emotions and your actions. The journey is a card of perspective, and it's about giving over to your senses and your instincts. This card was redrawn by Danielle, I think 4 or 5 times, and she kept moving the figure who you have to really look carefully to say, the first time she drew it, you're right there with the pilgrim and the horse. The pilgrim in this one is very androgynous, you know, gender non-binary, and the horse, right close up. And then they're, you know, in the foreground, and then they're, and she kept pulling the camera lens back until finally, you know, this is the long image of the journeys that we both shared, that we both had. And it is the idea of the movement into the landscape and learning to listen to your body and your spirit and your senses and your instincts. And instead of being carried up and away from the earth by your willpower, the spiritual quest is into a sacred landscape, into the earth and its mysteries, into life as the path of self-discovery. And the horse is not, you know, bridled and pulling, but is a partner and a companion and a teacher, and, you know, is the teacher of trusting your body, your wisdom, your instincts. And the pilgrim is learning to experience mutual devotion, right? And respect for other beings that we share the world with. And the pilgrim walks and learns that the journey of life is the pilgrimage. So it's a different energy. The next one that's radically different, and I'll just take a few more minutes and then we'll sum up. Of course, this is the ancestor. There you see the briar rose, a little bit of the blood from the thorn, and it's about making peace with our ancestral wounds and also being grateful for the gifts that we've received. Very different, takes the place of the devil, who's utterly, you know, biblical. He's the personification of evil, has no place in a witch's deck. He's not ours, he belongs to the Bible. And yeah, again, the interpretations and the esoteric are the attachment to the physical, the illusions of the material world, materialism without spiritual dimensions, desire overcoming judgment. The devil doesn't have a place in the witch's world or in the witch's wisdom tarot. And the ancestor is a different energy. It takes over and says, yes, there are patterns and projections and can make us act out in ways that aren't necessarily good for us or others, but these are things that can be healed. And the ancestor is a revered character in all indigenous cultures with lessons for us about healing the wounds that separate us from ourselves and from each other. So it's a very different energy. It's an energy of healing and gratitude and personal responsibility. To create the lives that we long for. And she offers healing rather than these sort of dark and dire warnings. The devil expresses selfishness and the ancestor expresses the self-taking responsibility. It's very different. Another one that's very different is this card, the offering. And you see again that matrix that we saw in the mycelium underground, and the genius loci, the fae, the spirit of place. This I could talk about this. Well, I will in the December class, This is a very magical card, but this takes the place of the Hanged Man and is a profoundly different energy. It's the energy of offerings from our fullness and our joy and our creativity and the best of who we are to make the world a better place through that, rather than the Hanged Man who suffers and sacrifices, and Odin, giving up an eye, and Jesus dying on the cross. It's a hugely different energy, which is not to say that sacrifice isn't a part of life, but the pain and the suffering is the way to enlightenment, is not the primary path. It is the offering of gratitude, of giving yourself fully to your own life, so that you love yourself, and you thereby thrive, and you love the world, and the world thrives. And offering is the giving of this love. Another card that's very different, balance instead of justice, with the sword, and logos, and the idea of the rational enforcement through the sword. We think of nature as devoid of morality, but in fact, it is the embodiment of spirit, and natural laws are full of spiritual wisdom. And one is this natural balance that is found in creation. Love, and maybe I'll stop there. There are lots of others, the wisdom keeper versus the hierophant, the papacy and all those images. But this one. So instead of the lovers, which is a wonderful card, but which is a human couple, this card, which was one of my favorite journeys that I had, there she is with her familiar. And it is the expression of the love, which is the force of creation, the force that engenders life and makes life worth living, and makes us joyful to be alive and to share, and is present and being exchanged by all of creation. Fox and the little girl, the pilgrim as child, myself and my fox sleeping on the chair, myself and all of you for whom I'm immensely grateful that you came to spend this time with me. In the end, the pilgrim meets the council of all beings, which is very different from the magician. It is a card in which all beings are present. It's a card of happiness and joy, of humility and companionship. And she appeared after they appeared. I had to have Danielle, I drove Danielle crazy. She had finished it and it was like, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. They went from sort of ghostly figures finally into this vision that I had, and I was deeply grateful that she took the time to keep drawing until we got there. And then the final journey was the pilgrim, who is behind me, and she knows, and I think maybe Marie, for you, and for all of us, certainly for me, there's no time in life when it isn't true, that having made this journey into life with all of its challenges and all of its difficulties and thorns and hardships, that despite, beneath, beyond all of those challenges is this divine presence that accompanies us, that loves us, that guides us when we ask, that nourishes us constantly with breath and water and food and shelter and all the things that we need to be at peace if we learn how to do it properly. And she knows that every path is open before her, right? Fox is traveling with her. And she knows that she's surrounded, that everything that surrounds her is alive and interconnected and bountiful and benevolent. And all she has to do is recognize that and be fully present in the world, in herself. And the journey that she's taken, which, as we go through the major arcana, which I'll do in December, is an initiatory journey. It's a constant unmaking in order to be made again, right? And it teaches us that even though the forms of life change, right, the spirit of life is eternal. And the heavens above are filled with starry paths that mirror the ones below. And she walks supported and sustained and nourished by the love from which she was created. She's embraced, She's inspired and she's guided like each of us. And magic is always flowing from creation into us, into her, into us, and from us back into creation. And so she walks. We make the pilgrimage of life, loved, nourished, sustained, and guided. She walks, and life is simple. And she knows that she walks, that we walk, that each of us walks, making our lives a prayer. So that's the blessing path of the major arcana. And that's the path that we all walk because we're all the pilgrim. And I am really touched that you took the time to spend with me to do this. It was a great journey for me to create, and an amazing journey for me to continue to work with and to help others with, and to be helped by others as folks share their experiences with me. And we just touched on it today, but even the things that you all shared were profound, and I'm deeply grateful that you shared those with me. So yeah, I kind of only went over by a few minutes. That's pretty good. We didn't get to all the practices I wanted to do, but we did a few. The next course will be in November, and we're gonna really go into working with the deck, how to honor it as an oracle, a lot of traditional things of melding your energies with the deck, how to work with it one card at a time, how to overcome resistance, how to ask the right questions, how to cultivate intuition, how to work with it in nature, how to work with the text, the wisdom, the essence, the counsel, and the magic, some spiritual practices for making magic with the deck, guided visualization and meditation, invocation. There are invocations and spell casting in the cards. So go over some of that. And different spreads. I might do the compass rose. We'll see. If there's time, I'll do that with you. And we'll do spreads and read for each other. So that's it. So yeah, it's a healing deck. It's a deck with the gift of sight, and it's a gift that restores our sight, witches have always been healers. So I hope it works for you as it has certainly worked for me. I hope it works for the earth as the earth hopes we will work for her. The divine is a question away. All we have to do is ask. So may you ask good questions and get useful answers. I hope that I will see you all again in a month. It would make me ecstatically happy to work with you further and deeper into the deck. And I think that's it. And we can take some time and do some questions. Everybody's free to go. You don't have to stay. But if you want to stay and share some of your experiences that you've already had in working with the deck, that would be marvelous. We could work for another 15, 20, 25 minutes if